Mayla's hand froze halfway to the coffee pot when she heard Henry's voice cut through the diner's morning chatter like a blade through silk. "You think you're untouchable, don't you, little waitress?" The entire restaurant fell silent. Even the cook stopped flipping pancakes. She'd been teasing the most dangerous man in Chicago for 6 months. Playful banter, stolen glances, harmless flirtation. But something in his tone today was different. Deadly serious. She turned slowly, her heart hammering against her ribs. Henry Romano sat in his usual corner booth, but today he wasn't alone. 3 men in expensive suits flanked him, their eyes scanning the room like predators. His dark gaze locked onto hers, and for the first time since she'd started working at Murphy's diner, Mayla felt afraid. "Come here," he said softly, but his voice carried across the room like a command from a king. Her feet moved before her brain could protest. As she approached his table, Henry leaned forward, his lips barely an inch from her ear. "Rule number 1, Mayla," he whispered, his breath warm against her skin. "Never tease a man who owns this entire city, not unless you're prepared for the consequences." What consequences could a simple waitress face from the most powerful mafia boss in Chicago? This story is just beginning to unfold, and every twist will leave you breathless. Join our community of story lovers by hitting that subscribe button. We're so close to reaching 5,000 subscribers, and your support means everything. Drop a comment letting us know where you're listening from, and let's dive into Mayla's dangerous world together. 3 hours earlier, Mayla had been laughing. The morning shift at Murphy's diner was her favorite, before the lunch rush, before the chaos, when she could actually breathe between orders. Her second job at the art supply store didn't start until 3 p.m., giving her a precious few hours of normalcy. "Table 6 wants extra bacon," called Jimmy from the kitchen, sliding the plate across the pass. Mayla grabbed it with practiced ease, balancing 3 plates on her left arm while pouring coffee with her right. 6 months of double shifts had turned her into a master of efficiency. She'd been working 2 jobs since graduating art school, not because anyone was sick or dying, but because dreams were expensive. Her tiny studio apartment was slowly filling with her paintings, cityscapes of Chicago, portraits of late-night diner customers, abstract pieces that captured the loneliness of working until midnight every day. Someday, she'd have her own gallery. Someday, she wouldn't smell like bacon grease and coffee grounds. "Morning, beautiful," came that familiar voice from booth 7. Mayla didn't need to look to know who it was. Henry Romano had been coming to Murphy's every Tuesday and Friday for 6 months, always ordering black coffee and wheat toast, always leaving a $100 tip that Jimmy made her split with the kitchen staff, always calling her beautiful. "Morning, handsome," she shot back with a grin, setting his coffee down. It had become their routine, harmless flirtation that made her shifts more interesting. "Let me guess, black coffee and wheat toast. You know me too well." Henry's dark eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. He was devastatingly attractive in a way that should have been illegal. Sharp jawline, perfectly tailored suits even at 7 a.m., and hands that looked like they could cradle a woman's face or break a man's neck with equal skill. Mayla had no idea who he really was. To her, Henry was just another customer who tipped well and made her laugh. She'd never noticed the way other patrons quickly looked away when he entered, or how Jimmy's hands shook slightly when Henry paid his check. "Working late again last night?" Henry asked, studying her face with an intensity that made her stomach flutter. "Art store until close, then painting until 3 a.m., Mayla admitted, refilling his coffee. "Sleep is overrated anyway." "Art?" His eyebrows raised with genuine interest. "What kind?" "Nothing fancy, just Chicago, the way it looks when most people are asleep." She shrugged, suddenly self-conscious. "Probably boring to someone like you." "Someone like me?" "You know, successful businessman, expensive suit, probably owns half the buildings I paint." She gestured at his immaculate appearance. "You probably buy art, not make it." Henry's laugh was rich and warm. "You might be surprised what I do, Mayla." The way he said her name made her pulse quicken. She'd never told him her name. It was embroidered on her uniform, but most customers never bothered to read it. "Well, Mr. Mystery," she teased, pulling out her order pad. "What's it going to be today?" "Actually," Henry stood abruptly, throwing a $100 bill on the table, "I need to go. Something just came up." He was halfway to the door when Mayla called out, "Hey, you didn't even touch your coffee." Henry paused, his hand on the door handle. When he turned back, his expression was different, harder, more serious. Some things are more important than coffee, beautiful. After he left, Mayla stared at the untouched cup and the crisp $100 bill. In 6 months, Henry had never left without finishing his coffee. Something about his sudden departure felt ominous, like a storm gathering on the horizon. At 2:47 p.m., as Mayla was hanging up her apron, Jimmy emerged from his office looking pale. "Mayla, we need to talk." "What's wrong?" She'd never seen the tough ex-Marine look so shaken. "That customer of yours, Henry, you know who he is?" "Some businessman." "Why?" Jimmy ran a hand through his graying hair. "That's Henry Romano, as in Romano family, as in the guy who runs every gambling operation, protection racket, and high-end theft ring from here to the Wisconsin border." The words hit Mayla like ice water. "What?" "He's the head of the Chicago Mafia, kid. And for some reason he's been coming here twice a week for 6 months just to see you." Mayla sank onto a stool, her legs suddenly unsteady. All those mornings of playful banter, all those times she'd called him handsome, teased him about his expensive tastes. "Jimmy, I had no idea. I swear I know you didn't. But now his guys are asking questions about you, about your schedule, your address, your second job." Jimmy's voice was grim. "Whatever game you two have been playing, it just got serious." Mayla's phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Beautiful, we need to talk. Tonight, 8 p.m. Giordano's on North Rush. Come alone. H." Her hands were shaking as she showed Jimmy the message. His face went white. "Jesus Christ, Mayla, that's not a request." Giordano's restaurant was the kind of place Mayla had only seen in movies. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, waiters in tuxedos, and prices that could feed a family for a week. She stood on the sidewalk at 7:58 p.m., wearing her only dress and feeling completely out of place. The hostess took one look at her and was about to speak when a man in a dark suit appeared. "Ms. Chen, Mr. Romano is waiting." Mayla followed him through the restaurant, acutely aware of the stares from other diners. They walked past the main dining room, past a smaller private section, and through a door marked "Staff Only." The hallway beyond was dimly lit, lined with oil paintings of Italian landscapes. The man stopped at a heavy wooden door. "He's inside." Mayla's hand trembled as she reached for the handle. On the other side was a private dining room with a single table set for two. Henry stood with his back to her, looking out a window that overlooked the Chicago River. "You came," he said without turning around. "Did I have a choice?" Now he turned, and Mayla's breath caught. Even in the diner, Henry had been handsome. But here, in his element, he was devastating. His suit was midnight blue, perfectly fitted to his broad shoulders. A thin gold chain glinted at his throat, and she caught a glimpse of a tattoo disappearing beneath his collar. "There's always a choice, Mayla. That's what I wanted to talk to you about. Jimmy told me who you are. And what did good old Jimmy tell you?" Henry moved to the table, pulling out a chair for her. Mayla remained standing. "That you're dangerous, that I should stay away from you. Jimmy's a smart man. You should listen to him." Henry's eyes never left her face. "But you're here anyway. You said we needed to talk, so talk." Henry's smile was sharp. 6 months ago, I walked into that diner planning to buy the building. Jimmy was 3 months behind on rent, about to lose everything. I was going to tear it down, put up condos. Mayla's heart sank. Murphy's was more than just her job. It was home to half a dozen employees who'd worked there for years. "But then I saw you," Henry continued, "arguing with a customer about his order. You were so fierce, so passionate about a plate of eggs and hash browns, and I realized I didn't want to buy the building anymore. I wanted to come back and see you again. So you've been playing with me for 6 months?" "No." Henry's voice was hard. "I've been trying to stay away from you for 6 months. Do you know what my world is like, Mayla? People die for looking at me wrong. Rivals use anyone I care about as leverage." The word care hit her like a physical blow. Every Tuesday and Friday, I told myself it would be the last time. Just coffee and conversation with a woman who treated me like a normal man instead of a monster. Henry stepped closer, and Mayla could smell his cologne, expensive, intoxicating. "But then you'd smile or laugh or call me handsome, and I'd forget every reason I should stay away." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because this morning someone took pictures of us together. Pictures of you laughing, touching my hand when you served my coffee. By noon, those pictures were being shown to my enemies." Mayla's blood went cold. "What does that mean?" "It means they know I care about you. And in my world, that makes you a target." Henry's jaw clenched. "There are 3 families trying to move in on my territory. They'll use anything to hurt me, including an innocent waitress who never asked to be part of this. Then we stop. I'll quit the diner, find another job across town. It's too late for that. Henry's voice was gentle but final. They already know who you are, where you live, where you work. Running will only make you look guilty of something. Mayla sank into the chair he'd pulled out, her legs unable to support her anymore. What are you saying? Henry knelt beside her chair, bringing himself to her eye level. This close she could see flecks of gold in his dark eyes, the thin scar along his left temple. I'm saying I can protect you, but it means staying close to me, very close. Like a prisoner? Like someone precious that I refuse to let anyone harm. The intensity in his voice made her shiver. And if I say no? Henry's expression darkened. Then I'll still protect you, but from a distance. And that distance might not be enough to keep you safe. Before Mayla could respond, Henry's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his face went stone cold. We need to go. Now. What's wrong? Henry was already moving, pulling her to her feet. Someone just set fire to your apartment building. The drive to Mayla's neighborhood was a blur of sirens and flashing lights. Henry's black SUV moved through traffic like water, driven by a man who spoke only into a Bluetooth earpiece. In the passenger seat, Mayla watched her world disappear through bulletproof glass. 8 units destroyed, but no casualties, the driver reported. Fire department says it started in the building next door, but... Henry's voice was dangerously quiet. Witnesses saw 2 men leaving the scene right before the flames started, men in expensive suits. Mayla's apartment building stood like a burned skeleton against the night sky. Fire trucks surrounded it, their hoses still spraying water on the smoldering remains. Her studio apartment, 3rd floor, corner unit, was completely gone. 6 years of paintings, her easel, her grandmother's jewelry, everything. I'm sorry, Henry said quietly. Mayla couldn't speak. She watched a firefighter emerge from the building carrying what looked like the melted remains of her coffee maker, the coffee maker she'd saved 3 weeks to buy. The Richardson family, Henry continued, his voice like ice, they wanted to send a message. They burned down an entire building to send you a message? No, they burned down your building to hurt me. The distinction hit her like a punch to the stomach. This wasn't about her at all. She was just collateral damage in some war she didn't understand. I want to see it, she whispered. Mayla, I want to see what's left. Henry nodded to his driver, who spoke into his earpiece again. Within minutes, a fire chief approached their vehicle. Money changed hands, rules were bent. Mayla's feet crunched on broken glass as she climbed the damaged stairs. The hallway reeked of smoke and chemicals. Her door hung off its hinges, and beyond it was devastation. Her easel was a twisted metal frame. Her canvases were ash. The corner where she'd kept her finished paintings was a blackened hole in the floor. But somehow, incredibly, one painting had survived, a small canvas that had been propped behind her dresser. It was singed around the edges, but the image was intact. Chicago at dawn, painted from her fire escape on one of those sleepless nights. It's beautiful, Henry said behind her. She'd forgotten he was there. It's all I have left. No, it's not. Henry moved closer, carefully avoiding the debris. You have your talent, your hands that created this, your eyes that saw something worth preserving. Fire can't take that away. Mayla turned to face him, this man who was both her protection and her destruction. Why didn't you just stay away? Why didn't you leave me alone? Henry's control cracked for the first time all evening. Because I tried. For 6 months I tried. Do you know what it's like to meet someone who makes you want to be a better man? Someone who looks at you and sees Henry, not Henry Romano. I don't know anything about you. Not really? Then let me tell you. Henry stepped closer, glass crunching under his expensive shoes. My father was shot when I was 16. My mother died of a heart attack at his funeral. I've been responsible for 300 men's livelihoods since I was 17 years old. I haven't slept through the night in 15 years because someone's always trying to kill me. His voice was raw, honest. I own restaurants and shipping companies and construction firms, most of them legitimate. I employ half the people in this neighborhood, but I also run numbers and loan money. And sometimes when people threaten my family or my business, I make them disappear. Mayla should have been terrified. Instead, she found herself stepping closer. I've never met anyone who made me want to give it all up, Henry continued, until I walked into Murphy's diner and watched you defend Jimmy's honor over a customer complaint. Henry, I know what I'm asking of you. I know it's not fair, but I need you to understand. If you stay with me, I will protect you with everything I have. If you walk away, he gestured at the destroyed apartment. I can't protect you from a distance. Not anymore. Before she could respond, his phone rang. The conversation was brief, conducted in rapid Italian. When he hung up, his expression was grim. What now? Mayla asked. The Richardsons just made their next move. They've put a bounty on you. $50,000 to anyone who brings them proof that you're dead. The words hit her like ice water. Dead? They want to make sure I understand that caring about someone makes me weak. They're wrong. Henry's eyes were black with rage. But they're about to find out exactly how dangerous it is to threaten what's mine. The possessiveness in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, it made her feel safer than she had all evening. What do? We disappear for a while. Let me handle the Richardsons. Henry held out his hand. But I need you to trust me. Mayla looked at his outstretched hand, then at the ruins of her old life. Everything she'd built was gone. Everything except this man who'd walked into her world and changed everything. She took his hand and felt her fate seal itself with the warmth of his fingers around hers. Where are we going? Henry's smile was sharp and protective. Somewhere they'll never find you. Somewhere I can keep you safe while I end this war. Henry's safe house was a penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan, 30 floors above the city and protected by security that made Fort Knox look casual. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Chicago, while inside everything was designed for both luxury and defense. Bulletproof glass, reinforced steel doors, and escape routes Mayla couldn't even identify. The kitchen is fully stocked, Henry explained, setting her rescued painting carefully on the marble counter. There's an art studio in the south wing. I had it prepared while we were at your building. Mayla stared at him. You had an art studio prepared? When? 3 months ago. I've been preparing this place for you since the moment I realized I couldn't stay away. The admission hung between them like a confession. For 3 months, Henry had been planning for this moment, hoping and dreading it in equal measure. Show me, she whispered. The studio took her breath away. North-facing windows for perfect light, professional easels, more art supplies than she'd owned in her entire life. Canvases of every size lined one wall. The other held brushes, paints, charcoals, everything an artist could dream of. Henry, this is... She turned to find him watching her with an expression of nervous hope. This is incredible. You said you painted Chicago at night. I wanted you to be able to paint it during the day, too. Mayla moved to the windows, looking out at the city sprawling below. From this height, Chicago looked like a painting itself, geometric patterns of light and shadow, the lake stretching to the horizon like blue silk. Why? She asked quietly. Why go to all this trouble for a waitress you barely know? Because I do know you. Henry stepped up beside her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. I know you work 2 jobs to buy paint instead of clothes. I know you tip Jimmy's busboy from your own pocket when customers stiff him. I know you paint until 3 a.m. because that's when the city shows you its secrets. Each word hit her like a revelation. He'd been watching, learning, caring more than she'd ever realized. I know you take the long way home from the diner because you like the way the light hits the buildings on Wacker Drive. I know you order extra coffee just so you have an excuse to talk to the homeless veterans who sit outside Murphy's. You've been watching me. I've been protecting you. There's a difference. Henry turned to face her fully. Do you know how many times someone tried to mug you on your way home from your late shift? 7. They never got close because my men were always there. Mayla's eyes widened. Your men? Did you really think it was coincidence that every time some drunk got handsy at the diner, Jimmy magically appeared? Or that your landlord suddenly stopped harassing you about late rent? The pieces were falling into place, creating a picture that both thrilled and terrified her. How long have you been protecting me? Since the 2nd week you started at Murphy's. Since the night I followed you home and watched you give your dinner money to that mother with 3 kids. Henry's confession was delivered matter-of-factly, but Mayla could hear the emotion beneath his controlled exterior. You could have any woman in Chicago, she said. Why me? Because any other woman would want Henry Romano, the power, the money, the fear I command. You wanted Henry, just Henry. His voice softened. Do you know what that's worth to a man like me? Before she could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the penthouse. Red lights flashed, and metal shutters started descending over the windows. Henry was instantly transformed, all business and deadly focus. Stay here, don't move from this room. What's happening? Someone's in the building. Henry was already moving. pulling a gun from a concealed holster. "The Richardsons found us faster than I expected." "Henry, wait!" But he was gone, disappearing through the studio door. The metal shutters sealed with a definitive clang, leaving Mayla trapped in the darkened room. For 20 minutes, she heard nothing but her own heartbeat and the distant sound of elevators. Then came the gunshots, sharp cracks that seemed to echo through the entire building. She pressed herself against the interior wall, clutching a paintbrush like it could somehow protect her. The shooting stopped abruptly, leaving silence that was somehow worse than the noise. Then the lights went out completely. Mayla's phone had no signal. The studio door was locked from the outside. She was trapped 30 floors above Chicago, with no way to know if Henry was alive or dead. She sank to the floor in the darkness, and for the first time since this nightmare began, she cried. Not for her apartment or her paintings or her old life, but for the man who'd risked everything to protect her. The man she was only now realizing she might be falling in love with. A soft scraping sound made her freeze. Someone was at the studio door. "Mayla?" Henry's voice, but strained, hurt. "I'm here." She ran to the door, pressing her hands against the metal. "Are you okay?" "I'm alive. That's what matters." The locks disengaged with a series of clicks. "Stand back." The door opened to reveal Henry, his shirt torn and blood-stained, his face grim. But he was standing, he was whole, and his eyes found hers immediately. "Is it over?" she whispered. "For now." Henry pulled her against him, and she could feel him trembling with relief or adrenaline or both. "But we can't stay here. They know about this place now. Where will we go?" Henry's arms tightened around her. "Somewhere they'll never think to look. Somewhere I can end this war once and for all." His voice carried a promise that made her shiver. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. The warehouse on the south side looked abandoned from the outside. Broken windows, rust-stained walls, weeds growing through cracked concrete. Inside, it was a different world entirely. Henry's men had transformed the space into a command center, complete with surveillance monitors, weapons, and enough technology to run a small military operation. "Welcome to where it all started," Henry said, leading Mayla through the maze of equipment. "My father bought this place in 1987. I've been planning the end of the Richardson family from this room for 3 years." Mayla watched the screens showing feeds from across Chicago. Restaurants, hotels, shipping yards, places she now realized were all part of Henry's empire. 3 years. They killed my cousin Marco over a gambling dispute. Shot him in front of his 5-year-old daughter. Henry's voice was ice. "I've been patient, building a case, gathering evidence, but they crossed a line when they targeted you." On the center screen, Mayla recognized the charred remains of her apartment building. Seeing it from this angle, surrounded by other camera feeds, she realized the scope of what Henry was dealing with. This wasn't just about her, it was about control of an entire city. "Henry, I need to tell you something." She'd been carrying the weight of it since they left the penthouse. "I'm not worth a war." He stopped walking, turning to face her with an expression of disbelief. "What did you just say?" "You heard me. I'm nobody special. A waitress with 2 jobs and big dreams. You're going to get people killed over someone who—" Henry's hands cupped her face, cutting off her words. "Stop, right there." "But no." His thumbs traced her cheekbones with infinite gentleness. "You want to know what you're worth? You're worth every risk I've ever taken, worth every enemy I've made, worth every sleepless night I've spent planning to keep you safe." His words were fierce, absolute. "You think you're nobody special? You made me believe in something besides power and fear. You made me want to build something instead of just taking it. You're worth everything, Mayla. Everything." Before she could respond, one of his men approached. "Boss, we've got movement." Richardson convoy heading toward Murphy's diner. Henry's expression went deadly. "How many?" 12 vehicles. Looks like they're planning to take the whole block." Jimmy, the other employees, everyone she cared about was about to become a target because of her connection to Henry. "We have to stop them," Mayla said. "We will." Henry was already moving, issuing orders in rapid Italian. Men grabbed weapons, checked earpieces, moved with the precision of a military unit. "But you're staying here." "Like hell I am." Henry stopped, danger radiating from every line of his body. "Excuse me. They're targeting innocent people because of me. I'm not hiding in a warehouse while you risk your life to fix my problems." "These aren't your problems." "Yes, they are." Mayla stepped closer, matching his intensity with her own. "The moment I took your hand in that burned apartment, they became my problems. The moment I chose to trust you, this became my life too. Henry stared at her, and she saw the moment his carefully controlled facade cracked. I can't lose you. Then don't leave me behind. Let me help. You're not trained for this. I'm not trained to shoot people or fight wars, but I know that neighborhood better than anyone. I know every alley, every back entrance, every place someone could hide. Mayla took his hands in hers. Let me be useful, Henry. Let me be part of the solution. For a long moment, Henry said nothing. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. Tony, change of plans. I want you to evacuate Murphy's diner. Get Jimmy and his staff somewhere safe. He paused, listening. No, all of them. And Tony, make sure they know this isn't their fault. When he hung up, Mayla felt a rush of relief. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Henry's smile was sharp and dangerous. Because now we're going to end this war. Tonight. Permanently. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. While the Richardsons focused on the diner, Henry's men would hit their real target, the Richardson family compound 20 miles outside the city, not to start a massacre, but to present evidence that would put the family away forever. 5 years of financial records, Henry explained as his men loaded into vehicles, proof of money laundering, human trafficking, murder for hire, enough to put the entire family in federal prison for life. Why not just give it to the police? Because the police need to find it themselves in a raid that looks completely legitimate. Henry's smile was grim. Sometimes the law needs a little help to find justice. As they drove through Chicago toward the Richardson compound, Mayla realized she wasn't afraid anymore. Terrified for Henry's safety, yes, but not afraid of the future they might build together. After tonight, she said quietly, what happens to us? Henry's hand found hers in the darkness of the SUV. After tonight, we get to find out what normal looks like. Normal? Dinner dates where nobody tries to kill us. Sunday mornings in bed. Watching you paint without wondering if someone's going to put a bullet through the window. His fingers tightened around hers. If you want that with me. Mayla's answer was cut off by the sound of sirens in the distance. FBI vehicles racing toward the Richardson compound, right on schedule. It's working, Henry breathed. But their celebration was premature. Henry's phone rang, and the conversation that followed turned his face to stone. What? Mayla demanded when he hung up. The Richardsons weren't at their compound. They anticipated the raid. Henry's voice was deadly quiet. They're at the warehouse. They have my men. How many men? All of them. The trap had been perfectly laid, and they'd walked right into it. Now Henry had to choose between his empire and the woman he loved. But Mayla had already made her choice. Drive faster, she told the driver. We're going to save them all. 2 years later, Mayla stood in the main room of the Romano gallery, watching art lovers examine her latest collection. The paintings were all of Chicago, but not the lonely, desperate Chicago she'd captured in her tiny apartment. This was Chicago seen through the eyes of a woman in love, vibrant, hopeful, full of possibilities. The artist will be holding a Q&A in 20 minutes, announced the gallery director. A woman Henry had hired specifically because she believed in Mayla's work, not just her connection to the Romano name. From across the room, Henry caught her eye and smiled. He was talking to an art critic from the Tribune, but his attention was entirely on her. It had been that way since the night they'd rescued his men from the Richardson trap, since the night Mayla had proven she was strong enough to stand beside him, not just behind him. The Richardsons were serving life sentences in federal prison. Henry's legitimate businesses had flourished without the constant threat of war, and Mayla's paintings had found their audience at last. Mrs. Romano, a young art student, approached nervously. Could you tell me about this piece? Mayla smiled, looking at the painting the girl indicated. It showed Henry sitting in Murphy's diner, coffee cup in hand, looking like just another customer. But if you knew how to look, you could see the protection in his posture, the love in his eyes. That's the moment I realized, Mayla said softly, that some rules are worth breaking, and some love is worth fighting for. Henry appeared at her side, sliding his arm around her waist. Ready for the next adventure, beautiful? Mayla leaned into his embrace, feeling the solid warmth of her husband, her protector, her partner in everything. With you? Always. And that's how a waitress from Chicago became a queen of her own empire, not through fear or power, but through love that refused to be broken. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button and share it with someone who believes in second chances. New stories arrive every week. Until next time.